Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is 4 o'clock. It's time to begin our December 4th meeting. I call itself to order at this time. And we'll take item 1, amendment request, a text amendment. Recognize Lisa for item A on under number 1.
Good afternoon, Lisa Stywinner, Director of Planning and Development with the City of Monroe. This is a continued public hearing for the Winchester Neighborhood Overlay District that was presented at the July 17th City Council meeting. The July 17th City Council meeting, staff did present a zoning text and map amendment request to remove the Winchester Overlay District from the Unified Development Ordinance and zoning map. City Council voted to table the request to the August 21st Strategic Council meeting for additional information or discussion. At the August 21st meeting, the request to remove the Winchester Overlay District was presented again. There were neighborhood residents that attended the meeting, provided input, and then discussion was held. Also at that meeting, City Council voted to establish a Winchester subcommittee that consisted of 3 council members, Councilmember Billy Jordan, Councilmember Saluda Anthony, and then Councilmember Franco McGee. The request to remove the Winchester Overlay District was tabled again until the December 4th Strategic Council meeting to allow an opportunity for staff to work with the Winchester Subcommittee and also the Winchester neighborhood regarding the Winchester Overlay District. Winchester Neighborhood Subcommittee held a meeting on October 18th, 2018 to discuss the guidelines and parameters of the Winchester Neighborhood Subcommittee in terms of agenda items, meeting schedules, and locations. At that meeting, a request was made that planning staff coordinate and facilitate a meeting with the Winchester Neighborhood Subcommittee and Winchester Neighborhood residents to go over the Winchester Overlay District. A Winchester Neighborhood Subcommittee meeting was held on November 15th, 2018 at the Winchester Community Center where neighborhood residents were invited to participate. The purpose of that meeting was to discuss the Winchester Overlay District, receive input from the neighborhood residents, and then take possible action. I think it was approximately 15 residents that attended the meeting. Winchester Neighborhood Subcommittee took the following actions to temporarily keep the Winchester Overlay District, and then also directed planning staff to come up with some ideas that can work with the neighborhood to rebuild the neighborhood, which could include some grants or loans to renovate houses that need to be brought up to code and to explore opportunities to provide affordable housing. The zoning text amendment and map amendment was presented to the planning board over the summer. Planning board did recommend approval of the zoning text amendment and map amendment to remove the Winchester Overlay District. The land development plan compliance is in your packet for review, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. And then I have...
Lisa, would any of that work that Wells Fargo that we met with and talked about, the loans to repair and update different residents, will that work in this schedule?
Community Development Division has already been working with Wells Fargo on the Neighborhood Lift program. Right. We did have, and I don't know all the details, but I do know there were some members of city staff, employees, and Monroe Union County CDC that were able to get into the program. There was a housing counseling workshop partner with Monroe Union County CDC in the city of Monroe that was held this Saturday, which there's an 8-hour requirement for housing counseling as part of the Neighborhood Lift program. So we have been working with Wells Fargo on that program.
Very good. Go ahead.
And that's particularly the LIFT program, but there were several programs that Wells Fargo offered, including LIFT, that we may or may not have the opportunity to work along with them with.
We met with them. We met with them. I met with, and somebody else met with them, and I think one of our staff went to Charlotte, did it not? 1 or 2 or whatever?
Teresa Campo, the Community Development Coordinator, did go to their, thank you.
Right, I knew that we had been in discussion with them, and of course, they brought the program down here and talked with us about it, and I didn't know if it would fit this or not. If so, certainly we want to do that, and whatever else we need to do. Anything else? Any more questions? Okay. Motion to adopt the resolution, or motion?
If I may, Mayor, one of the the things that the committee did that that the council assigned was to go back and look at the efforts that have been put forth in the Winchester community, both by the city of Monroe and through the city of Monroe working in conjunction with Monroe Union County CDC. I know it's very apparent that Councilman Kazai is very proud of the project that the CDC did over in Fairmont Street, because he speaks about that often. But over the years, the CDC was formed in 1989. And since 1989, they have built 18 new houses there in that Winchester overlay district. They have rehabbed 7 houses in that Winchester overlay district, working with state grants through their scattered site housing program. During that same period of time, the city of Monroe has rehabbed dwellings on First Street, Kennedy Street, Massey Street, Belton Street, English Street, Hill Street, Miller Street, Carr Street, and Board Street through the city's efforts, and again through state or national the monies, and sometimes using a conjunction of the two put together. There are potentials for the city with the ownership rights that they've got in lots where they've torn houses down. There's an opportunity for the city to acquire 3 lots that are on real nice level areas, Board Street and Jerome Street, Adams Street, and Carr Street. There are private properties that have been built there in the Winchester area in that overlay district at the corner of Carr Street and John Street, Fairley Avenue and Board Street, Fairley Avenue between John Street and Beer Street. Also on Burke Street, there's a 2-story house that was built on Board, a 2-story house built on Hill. And those 2-story houses that were built on 50-foot lots were the ones that that caused that community to ask the city council for protections. And through the meeting that Ms. Anthony and I had in coming up with this background information. And again, you know, this is not work that has occurred over the past 50 years. This is work that has occurred over the past 20 to 25 years. So there are opportunities that are available for us now, in my opinion, just like you were talking about Wells Fargo. Ms. Anthony just came from California with the National League of Cities meetings, and there were opportunities that they saw out there that might work in the Winchester area. Mr. McGee was out in California too, and he went through some workshops that might work in the Winchester area. I think that we need to give fresh ideas and new opportunities a chance to work in the Winchester area while those protections are in place. And with that in mind, the committee would recommend that we not remove the overlay district at this time, that we ask the city staff to continue to look for ways to make the Winchester area a better place, and look for opportunities to put public properties or long-standing properties on that vacant property we have on the south side of Winchester. I just think that all opportunities have not been exhausted, and I'd like to see us do that. So again, I would make the motion on behalf of the committee that we not remove the overlay district from the Winchester area at this time.
I would second that. I also like to say there's a 2-story structure that's to be built on Board Street that is not in keeping with what's already over there as well.
I have a motion, I have a second. Any discussion? My discussion, I would have a little bit, Billy, I want to talk a little bit about what you talked about the south side of Winchester. I've talked about the south side of Winchester for years. Yeah. And we still got the south side of Winchester. Yeah. And of course, I know Lisa and them has worked vigilantly with this, and I know that. But it's time that we do something at some point with the south side of Winchester. and put some nice homes in there, affordable homes that people could live in.
Well, well, Mayor, the property on the south side of Winchester, I view as our opportunity to do something similar to what Charlotte's going to do with the Eastern Mall property.
Well,
And I think that there's opportunities working with other entities that will allow us to put properties over there that could be, again, public purpose properties. I was thinking about just putting housing over there, and I went through the area over off of Green Street this past weekend. You know, we had a developer to come in there and he said, well, we'll put nice housing here and it's going to build the community up. And I can't remember the name of the streets, but some of them were built there right off of Green Street. Some of them were built off of Sunset. So houses in of themselves don't generate the kind of opportunity that you want to see build up a community. I think that there's probably some other opportunities that we can look at. And I would hope that we would take the same kind of stance with that property on the south side of Winchester that we took with the Center Theater, and that we took with the property where we're getting ready to put the science project. The property out there at the corporate center, where we bought it and we sat on it for years and people were laughing at us because we weren't doing anything with it. I would hope that we would look at that as the same kind of investment that we have in our airport or that we have in our golf course. Whatever goes on the south side of Winchester is going to be a legacy, whether it be good or bad, to this city council. It don't matter what city councils previously have done or not done, but what we do from this point on is going to be a legacy to this council. And again, I would just ask that we allow the protections to stay in place because there's investment going on. As Mr. Anthony said, someone is getting ready to build a 1,600 square foot house right there on Board Street. There's another person that is redeveloped or rehabbed a house on Winchester, and he's got it on the market for a little over $100,000. So I look at that area as a house that we are trying to sell. It's a property that we're trying to market, and right now we're trying to market that property and asking people to come in and give us full market value, and the carpets are dirty. You know, we got dirty dishes in the sink. We got holes in the wall. And I think that in order to get the best possible use out of it, that we need to, fix it up a little bit.
well, I agree, talking about affordable housing or whatever, we need to do something on the south side, and I think whatever it is will be a plus for that area, but it also, the plus will be for the city of Monroe, and I certainly would applaud seeing something done on the south side. I have a motion to say, yes, ma'am.
Actually,
I just want to interject.
go ahead, ma'am, but I
I'll
was going to say
be glad to read that if I need to.
actually, what you would need to do for the motion to deny would be the second half of what is 1B, which would be a motion denying zoning map amendment. So that would be what you would need to do.
I make a motion to adopt ordinance,
No.
Which one?
It's the second half of 1B, sir.
Right here.
So right after the or, where it says on 1B, or motion denying zoning map.
Okay. I make a motion denying zoning map amendment.
Second.
I have a motion, a second. Now, Ms. Anthony, did you have something to say a minute ago?
But I didn't know, it doesn't necessarily pertain to the motion. What I was going to say was, you said part of it for me. Whatever we do on the south side from Monroe will not only benefit Monroe and Winchester as well. Anything we do in any part of the city benefits the whole city. And any city is only as strong as their weakest link. And I'd just like to remind the council that on 2 previous occasions, there have been ventures that failed in that area. I too would like to see something that that we plan and implement, because it's very important. The area, as I say all the time, is historic, and we want to preserve that legacy.
Okay. All right, have a motion and a second.
Mayor, if we could hold just 1 second, we've not had to do this one this way, because we just want to make sure that we're telling you exactly how it needs to be done, so there's not a question as to the actions taken. Mr. Jordan, if you would be so kind as to amend your motion to have the first part of it also be approving the resolution denying land development plan compliance.
Is that section A?
That would be section A, so it'd be motion to adopt resolution denying land development plan compliance, and then motion to deny the amendment. So if you would just add what's after the "or" in 1A to your 1B, you're good to go.
Okay, my motion would also be amended to include a motion to adopt resolution denying land development plan compliance.
Now, okay. I have a second on that.
You do it, too.
All right. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that's taken care of. That moves us down to C.
No, you're done now, so
Oh, that's always a
now to item 2.
Oh, say, item 2,
Mr. Mayor,
yes.
give me just 1 second. I want to thank Councilman Billy, Franco, and Saluda for taking their time, 3 months. But tell us a little bit, if you would, about your community participation when you had the meetings with the stakeholders in the Winchester community.
The meeting we had, again, it was a night meeting, and the majority of the people who were at the meeting are people who are a part of that community. Again, the pastor from Mount Calvary was there, and I think he is living in the parsonage there, Church Parsonage on LaSalle Street, so he is an actual resident there, in addition to being someone that's leading that congregation. And Miss Anthony knows the people that were there a lot better than I do, but, you know, Miss Llewellyn was there, and she is a longtime resident there. She may have even grown up there in that area. Her father has a house there on LaSalle Street. Miss Jackie Crawford was there. She actually has her personal residence there, and her daughter is living in her grandmother's house on First Street. So, you know, just a lot of commitment there. Shavonda Crowder was there. And so,
I give you more names.
Okay.
More names and numbers. It was very well attended. We had a full house. Most of the people there either grew up there and still live there, or lived there and still live somewhere in Monroe, but came back because of interest. And then we had some other property owners there who lived in Indian Trail, but the property been left to them by parents. We had several people there who rent property in that neighborhood as well. But we had a good age group mixture, good economic group mixture, and there was a lot of interest shown.
is there, if you want other information, we've got other.
And that is a sign-in sheet, you know.
But it was, Miss Minnie Crowder was there. You know, she's a longtime resident. Her father, of course, you know, both her parents were school teachers. Right. Her father, you know, had the cleaners up there at the corner of Morgan Mill and walk up on the residence, the old home place right there on Morgan Mill Road. She and her husband lived right there.
My brother Harold was there.
Who was that?
I said Harold, my brother Harold.
Yeah, right,
was
your
there.
brother Harold, and you know, he's a longtime resident there.
That's one street.
One of the other things, since we are still talking about it, I was going to try to be brief because I didn't want to. We've got other things to talk about. When the city did the CDBG grant over there in that area, they went through and loaned out monies to people to fix some of their houses up. I'm familiar with at least one house, and, you know, I'm familiar with it, but there may be others. But the person got a low-interest loan to fix the house up and after renting it for several years, he started having problems with the plumbing, started having problems with the electricity in the house. And he ended up having to go in and replace the cast iron sewer pipe with a plastic pipe, which should have been replaced, as a part of a rehab. You end up having to replace the galvanized water lines with new water lines, which should have been done as a part of rehab. Ended up having a problem with the flooring because, it should have been shored up and was not shored up. I'm familiar with that property, and that person was in a financial position to be able to do that. But there are other people in that area who may have had work done on their properties, and there may be people who own properties in that area that they currently rent out who have some of those same longstanding issues because of maybe some faulty work that was originally done, when those houses were rehabbed. So I would hope that the staff would be mindful of that as well, and not think that just because a house all of a sudden needs a lot of repairs that people have not been keeping their houses up. Some of these houses were purchased and they were in pretty good shape at the time, but as years go on, unforeseen work needs to be done on them.
Question. The lots that you were speaking of when you first started speaking, are we in position to purchase those right now?
If the city staff would clear up the titles, and the reason I say we could purchase them because we own the liens against, we own tax liens, or we can purchase the county's tax liens, and then we could have clear title to those lots, and that's three I'm aware of, and they're on nice level ground, and they would make great additions to that community. We could make those lots available to the CDC or whoever we wanted to make them available to build houses on.
Gee, can we jump on that?
What we ask you to allow us to do is to determine the amount of liens involved, and so that we can say whether or not we're looking at a significant cost from the tax standpoint for the county side. Because our liens, if you direct us to waive those, we can do that, but the thing is with the county tax issues, we can't. We'd have to work with them on it. But if you could make sure the staff has specific parcels, we can research that and then be able to get back to you and then let you know what the cost would be for that, so the council's aware of if it's a matter where we have to get your approval for those waivers.
Can we do that first meeting in January, Mr. Jordan?
Whenever the staff could get the information together, and they may need, I would think we need at least until February's meeting.
Okay.
Because I don't like to work the staff too hard during the Christmas holidays. I'd like for them to be able to take the time off and enjoy their
Oh,
families.
you got a smile out of it.
So if we could work, they could have until February to bring us that report back, I'd appreciate it.
If Councilmember Jordan, if there are specific parts that you have in mind,
I will.
if you could let either me or let Ms. Steinwinter know, that way we can work through those issues.
Okay.
Could you
along
include
with
the
our funds.
parcels on the south side as well? See who owns those? I don't know if the city owns.
City owns those.
City owns those.
Now, Mayor,
Yes.
the committee of Mr. Jordan and Mrs. Anthony and Mr. McGee, that's an ongoing committee.
Well, I'll tell you, and I appreciate what you're attempting to do, and I hope that will be ongoing. But this is something that's near and dear to me. Lee and I've been working over there for almost ever since I've been on council, and so I'm very committed to it. What I would rather see happen is for me to be able to step down off the committee, and for one of the other council members who needs to learn about what has been going on over there. Maybe Mr. Holloway, he was asking some questions, and he might be a person that would, receive firsthand benefit from, working with the community, talking with the people, and seeing what has been done, and maybe what we can do to help facilitate. So if I could do that, and then, maybe have Ms. Anthony to chair the committee, and have Councilman Holloway to join Councilman McGee and Councilwoman Anthony on the committee, that's what I would like to see happen.
Okay, I so make that motion.
Not second.
Have a motion and a second, all in favor? Any opposed? All right.
I have just a quick question for Majid. Is there a precedent or any chance that the county might, since there's gonna be value for these lots, that the county might waive those tax liens?
Not that I'm aware of, and I would be, and the finance director isn't here, but based on how the new posture the county is taking towards dealing with unpaid taxes and foreclosures, we don't know if they'd be willing to. However, after we do the research, we can approach them and ask them. We'll see. We're not optimistic, but then if you're not optimistic about it, then you get to be pleasantly surprised.
If we don't ask, the answer's always no.
That's correct.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, you must have been reading my mind. I was wanting to ask the same question. It benefits them just do the same thing, and we all work together. That's what it's all about. All right, we'll go to item 2, proposed rules procedure for city council. Mr. Majid.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and Council, this is an item that we brought to you back in October, and it is a set of proposed rules that, from a staff perspective, we feel can help with the meetings and also help clarify issues with the agenda. The major issue the council raised in the last one was how you'd conduct public hearings, and for zoning public hearings, we had originally suggested that those, when you had a contested zoning, be limited to 10 minutes per side. Council raised a concern that that would prevent folks from being able to say all the issues and all the concerns they have, and that as you would like to make sure that citizens have the opportunity to present their concerns, that would be changed. So what we did is we deleted that, we changed that back to where everyone would have 3 minutes per person and go from there. The other major changes, there have been no other changes since what you saw, but we wanted to make sure we highlighted the items that are of importance. For example, one of the big things from a staff perspective is that we would suggest that the mayor, manager, attorney, clerk, or any 2 members of council could place items on an agenda. That way it clarifies who has the ability to request that an item be placed on the agenda. And the reason we picked 2 members of council is under state law, 2 members of council can call a special meeting. So if you can call for a special meeting, you should probably be able to add an item to an agenda. We also have set up a provision to where a mayor or council member can ask that an item be added to a future agenda, and it would be unless somebody objects. If there's an objection, then you have the normal process where if the mayor, 2 members of council, manager, clerk, or attorney decide to put it on, it can be put on. For one other item is that if you have 4 or more citizens talking on the same topic at public comment, we suggest limiting that to 10 minutes total. Because your comments, and the reason we did that is your comments at the October 2 meeting concentrated on the zoning issue, which you're concerned that when folks come in and there are rezonings, that you wanted to make sure that individuals had a chance to say what they needed to say. If you, however, would like us to remove that limit on 4 or more citizens talking on the same item at public comment, we can take that as well. But beyond that, we've also explained which procedural motions are used at the council meeting, and these are, again, items for your consideration. There is, and just again to make perfectly clear, there is no requirement that you approve this tonight. We just want your approval or input. If you choose to approve it, we'll be happy to move forward with it at a time you feel is appropriate, or we can bring it back to you back in January with additional changes.
I'd like to have some time to read it and look at
I
it.
would too.
All right, thank you, sir. We will be happy to bring it back to you in January for your consideration once again.
I do have one comment.
Yes,
That
ma'am.
comment about limiting it to 10 minutes and hearing no more than 4 people on the same issue. How will we determine what for? So for that reason, I don't think we need to limit it to 10 minutes.
Actually, ma'am, it would be, if there's more than 4 citizens on a topic, they would all get to talk, but it's a 10-minute total. And if your concern is that we would prefer to not have a limit, we're happy to remove that as well.
Well, that's something I'm going to talk about also in January.
Yeah, okay.
I know if I got something to say, I want to finish it.
All right.
Because the mayor has a discretion of allowing more than 3 minutes if at his discretion.
Yeah, I just, well, I've always said.
I think what staff is hearing is that you would like us to eliminate that limit, so we'll be happy to bring you back in January, the revision with that eliminated, and then what I'll try to do is heck even send it to you so that you have something to look at over the holidays or use for kindling in the fireplace if you so decide.
I also have a question. I do understand that we have 2 council members. We have to have 2 to request a special meeting, but do we also need to have 2 to have something put on the agenda?
That's what we're suggesting, and that's the framework we've tried to use as a staff, because if you have 2 members under state law can call a special meeting, we think it's appropriate, then 2 members of council can add an item. The mayor, of course, has the discretion to add an item at the mayor's discretion. Manager, clerk, and attorney as well. But, because of the fact that state law says the mayor or any 2 members of council can call a special meeting, we thought that was a good standard to use.
We also have the procedural practice of 9 out of 10 or 9.9 items go to a committee before coming to council. And so with trying to stay honest to that protocol or practice, we thought that would help.
Okay.
Okay, any more questions? We'll bring this back in January, okay?
Thank you, Mayor. We'll do that.
Okay. Item 3, travel policy for elected officials.
Kick it off.
Yes, sir.
Mayor and City Council, you're requested to consider refining the travel policy GA-02 to reduce exposure and vulnerability to allegations of waste, fraud, and abuse of governmental and travel funds. The topic was initially referred to Council on October 2nd strategic session. The reasons forming the basis for the referral of the policy to the Council was that the current travel practices may not violate existing travel policies but are inconsistent with best practices. The existence of public attention and scrutiny on travel expenses, extensive number of public records requests, professional context of my experience with extensive federal travel and operating in about 5 or 6 different communities. A conclusion reached that the current policy has flaws that increases the mayor and council's exposure and vulnerability. As I mentioned, the policy was initially presented to council on October 2nd. And the direction from the session was as follows: to remove the sentence from section 5C, portions of allocations shall not be transferred to the allocations for other elected officials. So that sentence was removed, and the removal of that sentence had the effect of allowing council members to use another council member's surplus, unneeded or unwanted travel funds. There are probably multiple options for administering that provision. I've offered a few examples for your consideration, and I offered a recommendation. So in the situation where a council member has declared an amount of travel funds would be not used or surplus, one option would be that the surplus could be distributed equally among the remaining council members, or the surplus could be transferred at the discretion and direction of one of these 3, not any one of them, but one of these as an idea, at the request of a council member, the request of any 2 council members, or at the direction of council. Another option would be to simply do it on first-come, first-served basis, or some other method that might occur to council. My recommendation was that council members that have declared an amount of their travel allowance will not be used or otherwise surplus may have that amount redistributed equally among the remaining council members that have requested the use of additional surplus travel funds. A transfer form would be prepared by staff, acknowledged by the council member that is relinquishing the travel funds, and the form would be reviewed by the mayor. Once the form is approved by the mayor, those funds would be transferred by city staff. Thereafter, the funds would be available for use. So that pretty much brings us up to what transpired at the October 2nd meeting. And I ask, is there any discussion or consensus on the recommendation?
Well, to me, that sounds it will, first of all, the quorum approved that on that meeting. And it seems like that's so, has too many pieces to it, and it's not all that, shouldn't be all that complicated. I think that all of us are duly elected, all of us are reasonably intelligent, all of us, when we make a request, I think the request is warranted. We're not making a request for vacation, we're not making requests to fool around, but I think we make a legitimate request, and you ask a former team member for a transfer of funds. I don't think that it needs to be have so many steps in it. It ought to be easier enough where the request can be made by a council member. Maybe it needs to be approved by the mayor. I think that's enough steps. All those unnecessary steps don't make sense to me.
It does complicate the situation, in my opinion, as well, because I don't see why we can't just at the end of the fiscal year, whatever is over, we just take it from the other monies that are left in the budget. The council members that didn't use their funds, if there's an overage of a council member that has used funds over their limit, why can't we just take the remaining funds and apply it to that outstanding balance of that current member? That's like a project. So in essence, you can kind of give everybody a project number if it's a finance situation, and then that way each council member can have a budget per se. And if I were to go over my budget, and with that line, it could be transferred to, I'm just going to use me for an example, to my project to cover whatever funds are still available in that particular finance line.
The hardship there is during the year, we don't know who may have surplus funds. So during the year, we would, unless if there's nothing else said, we would.
That's why I said at the end of the fiscal year.
We would cap or limit travel. If a budget line item for a council member is $4,000, for example, we wouldn't allow that to be exceeded. So we wouldn't be able to really necessarily do that, wait till the end of the year to make that decision.
Right.
And I like to point out, sometimes we have different travel needs. For example, I serve on the Federal Advocacy Committee, and so we have meetings during the year. I didn't try to go this year because I was incapacitated. So that's a legitimate request. And so if it's a legitimate request made, to me, it penalizes the person, and then I'd actually have to be able to fulfill their duties if those funds are not available. And usually when they have those meetings, whoever the president of the advocacy steering committee is, they usually have it wherever they live. And it does add expense to it. Me personally, when the place is within 10 hours, I usually drive to cut expenses. I probably can't do that now, but it doesn't have to be a big problem.
The other thing I thought about too, to keep the travel pretty easy for everybody, is that we don't count the NLC against our travel funds. Because, to be honest, because I went to California, I've exceeded mine already. And I really don't think it's fair if I'm trying to go and get continuing education, to get the latest information and technology to help better serve my community. I feel like I'm almost being penalized, and I can't do any other meetings or any other conferences to allow me to do that, to better serve. I guess I just don't understand why we have a cap on our finances. When you know, just like Councilmember Anthony said, if we are all been approved to attend a conference, just like we attended the one in Raleigh, if we're going to better serve, I don't see why we can't go. If it's legitimate, if, you know, I understand that, you know, we can't go to every event, but if it's within the parameters of how much we can allow or that we can budget for all council members, because I've seen other departments and they have way more budgets than we have. The budget line is way more than ours. We are on at 27,000, the others have 56, 80,000, whatever, which I think is interesting. But so we're city council members now. We have smaller pots to pull from, and we are to go and help serve the community, and I just don't, I'm just trying to figure out why we have a cap and other departments don't. Or well, I won't say it that way. While our monies are limited, our budgets are limited with regards to, like, we have one of the smaller budgets as a council, and other departments have more to kind of finagle.
I can't answer.
I wasn't aware of that. Is that,
City council sets, the group here, your colleagues set the spending limit for travel.
Right.
So that's the
Right, that's
why
right.
and wherefore on the dollar amount.
That's why, yeah.
Well, you may be talking about other departments, and I don't know what the other departments are. But when you talk about other departments, you're talking about much more personnel than 7 of us.
Not all of them.
Well, what department? I mean, like, again, I don't know.
There's some departments with less than we have that doesn't spend more money than we have in travel.
I'm not aware of it. I mean,
maybe that might be something we need to look at. I wasn't aware of that.
yeah.
Yeah. So,
Okay, any other discussion?
So the current, as amended in October, there was a provision that allows transfer of funds between board members, and with no guidance on how that will transpire during the year. So is that council's desire to leave that as it is currently?
So currently, what is it that we're doing currently? Asking and,
Oh,
We don't have
there's
a
no
policy.
guidance on what,
Okay.
how that would be handled, other than it is permitted.
But I think to be fair, we need to have a policy in place so that you're not having to go to people, you're not having to calculate how much you're gonna be spending. And I think, City Manager Faison has some very good ideas. If you don't wanna kind of,
yeah, well, let's
Take
get
those
one,
and-
because I just say this, some registrations, you get a discount for if you register by December 30th, a significant discount for the NLC Congressional Conference. It's a $200 discount, and so we don't need to tally with it. Go ahead and do it and put it into place, because we penalize ourselves from slowing around.
Well, it might, and I'm just shooting from the hip, might be good in the next year's budget to each, some way or another, come up with okay, this is what I would like to attend the National League of Cities Conference, and go to the, someone may want to go to the meeting in March in Washington DC, where we meet with our delegations and so forth and so on. And I don't know how we could work it out. I don't know that it's the way to do it. It might be a way to settle it, is, okay, this is what I'd like to do, and if this is approved, that's what goes. And when you go to them, that's all you're gonna go. What I'm saying, I'd like to go here, here, and here, and if that's approved in the budget by the council or whatever, then okay, you know what you got set.
right.
And when you get there, that's as far as you're gonna go.
That's fair.
And you're gonna have X number of dollars of allowance. You can't go, I mean, I'm talking about the whole 7 councilmen.
Well, the allowance would be, okay, what does it cost to go to the National League of Cities? Depending on where it's at, of course, what it costs.
That's true.
If you want to go meet with your delegations in Washington, as we do, most of us do each year, and I think it's very important that we meet with our delegation. And if we've done it, and all other cities do it, I say all other, most cities I know go in March and meet with their delegation, and some has breakfast with them, and would have a meeting with their delegation. I think it's very meaningful. But what I'm saying, if you itemize where you want what you want to attend in that year, that budget year, if that's approved, then you know what you've got.
Let me add this, we are required by having membership in the National League of Cities to have a voting delegate at the city summit, which is held in the summer, and also at the congressional, so somebody is supposed to be at each of those meetings. I have served in the past in that fact, and paid my own way, by the way, several times.
Well, I know, we point somebody to those, to be the voting delegate, like, You was the voting delegate in Raleigh the other day, as you know.
And in California as well.
But, I don't know that could not be worked out. It might be a good idea, but that's something for the council to talk about, something for the city manager to sit down and discuss. And everybody get together and see if we can come up with some way to say, okay, this is it, and when we get there, that's all it is.
You know, Bobby, 4, 5, 6 years ago, we flew up to Washington to meet with our delegation and flew back that afternoon.
We did it in
so that
one
we
day.
would save money.
Well, we got what we went for.
That's exactly
We went for a purpose to meet with our delegation, and we left early that morning, come back the same afternoon,
And ate at McDonald's.
and ate at McDonald's. That's exactly right. I'll underline, I'm glad you brought that up. Ate at McDonald's. And that's okay, I don't have a problem with that. But I'm just saying, it can be done if we have a plan and work the plan and do the plan. And there won't ever be a question about this thing. And, that's what I would propose to our manager, to sit down and come up with some solution in that order, not exactly what I said, but something will work, if the council wants that, and bring it back and let's look at it, and then implement that in the next year's budget.
Okay, well, in the interim, while this is still on the table, what do we do? Because, I for one have requests out trying to beat that December 30th deadline. And as been stated, we have no policy now, so what's to be done about that?
Well, that's open for discussion.
I would say that you go ahead and follow the vote that you guys took the other day with the individuals that wish to go on the different conferences. Just use good judgment and expenditure of the money. So that would be my recommendation.
So adding to that, basically what you have is if there's an individual member of council who has a surplus, and only they would know if they have a surplus, then it would be up to them to release that to someone else. So that's what you have at this point. It's, and somehow we as staff have to know that so we can make the transfer of funds. So all I've basically recommended is that you have a procedural practice in place, basically which follows how the staff handles budget transfers, which is a piece of paper that documents who's releasing the funds, where it's going, and what the dollar amount is. And that that the mayor, that the releasing council member acknowledges it, the receiving council member acknowledges it, and it goes through the mayor. That's essentially what I
Mayor,
recommend.
I would
Lynn,
put that in the motion.
if I don't think, this has already occurred twice. And as far as I know, there was no problem. I mean, I've had 2 council members to ask me if I would transfer funds. I made a call to the city clerk, let her know that I was willing to transfer those funds because I did have them available. And she worked with finance, and it was done. I'm like Miss Anthony, we're all reasonable people here. All of us have, I think, some business minds about us. And until we come up with something that is that needs to be very, very formal, I think that for right now, that the way it was handled by Miss Anthony and by Miss McGee works for us, unless someone knows a reason that it won't work, that I'm not aware of.
Well, to stand the test of audits at the staff level, we document line item transfers from one line to another.
So
I would say that
so
the
say
same
to me,
requirement would exist at the council level.
very good, very good. I just explained to you what happened with 2 transfers I made to other council members.
We did our best to accommodate you.
Okay,
I'm not saying it was good practice.
okay, all right.
I'm definitely saying it was not good practice.
It was not good practice. So tell me what would have been good practice in those situations.
I just outlined it.
Oh, no. Tell me, so should I have come into the office and filled out a formal request or a formal release of those funds? Would that have been the proper thing to do?
Yes.
Okay. From now on, whenever a request is made of me, you put together a formal request, and I'll come in and I'll sign it so that, it can be documented. So it's not just for word. Apparently, word of mouth is not something that you consider to be appropriate between members of the city council.
It's local government, we don't.
Okay, well, that's fine, that's fine. Well, I don't mind coming in. I can come in and sign a piece of paper for you as easy as I made a phone call to the city clerk.
So I make a motion that we do the paper form release and release of funds if somebody wants some. That's my motion.
Mr. Kazai, could I perhaps ask that, because I know that the accounting folks could tell you that they also sometimes do this electronically, would you be willing to revise your motion to be paper or electronic form as determined by the finance department?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Now, when you say that, do you mean you can ask electronically, I can email on the request?
It's not an email request, ma'am. The way it typically works with the fund transfer system is they have a setup that you have to be on the city
I
system
know about
to
the
do.
transfer of funds, I'm
Yes,
talking
ma'am.
about the request.
No, that's the request and all that is done by a electronic form that that they, at least internally in department funds. But what I'm saying is if the finance department develops a way to do it electronically, that you can also do that way. And that way you're not just limited to a piece of paper. So that way, it's not an email one, it may be a form that they tell you if you log on with your city provided computers or iPads, that you could do that. That's why we're throwing that out there as a possibility.
Okay, well, I'm requesting that the form be developed rapidly. I have requests out, 2 of them have been granted, the other one you got land, I don't know if you seen it or not. But, so we can fill out the proper paperwork.
Call for the question.
All right, have a motion, have a second.
I second, Mayor.
Have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Hearing none, that's passed. Okay.
Okay, also, however, at the October 2nd strategic session, there were a number of items and concerns that were not discussed. And if the council so inclined, I can paraphrase those. There's 5.
Yes.
Okay, so the first involves Section 1, purpose. Section 1 does not clearly express the travels at the city's expense shall be for a designated public purpose. Section 7A, transportation, does not set forth parameters to use the lowest cost means of traveling out of state. Section 7B does not discourage lodging when the meeting or conference is within a reasonable commuting distance. Section 7D, spouse and companion travel costs. It lacks requiring existence of official city business as a basis for reimbursement of companion or spouse travel expenses. Item 8A4 does not exclude or limit personal phone call charges billed to the city. I would generally comment that council members adhere to the current policy, but there are instances of errors or oversights that occur, and staff works to reconcile those situations. However, the following observations had been observed: that companion travel at the city's expense without a demonstrated public or official purpose has been common for an extensive period of time, in excess of perhaps a decade. Hotel use at the city's expense that is within a reasonable commuting distance to City Hall has occurred, and the use of a city credit card used for miscellaneous personal expense items such as restaurant charges, gas purchases, and so forth, while also collecting per diem or mileage reimbursement also has occurred. Both those practices and charges are not compatible, one or the other. So my recommendation is that City Council continue evaluating the existing policy and practices for use in providing guidance to revise and refine the travel policy. And if you're inclined to do so, that we can today or at a subsequent meeting, we can incorporate those revisions and present them in their entirety to you in advance of a future meeting or at a future meeting.
Okay.
What is your preference?
Comment?
Future meeting.
Future meeting?
Yeah, and I'd like to get it in the
Okay.
advance of the meeting.
Have a motion for, let me motion on that one.
This is a motion to table further discussion to the.
Okay, I have a motion, I have a second to table.
Do you want to do it there, is there strategic on the January 8th meeting if you approve the calendar later tonight? So would council like to do this at your January 8th meeting or do this in
February.
February?
February.
At your February meeting, strategic, would that be that suit the council?
Okay, I have a motion and a second to table to the February meeting. Do we have a date on that?
I'll defer.
Well, okay. Anyway, I have a motion and a second to table to February meetings on this other part of the policy. All in favor? Any opposed? Hearing none. Okay, we'll bring the rest of it back then in February. All right, that concludes our 4 o'clock
Thank you.
meeting. Does council have anything?
I've got just one comment, and it goes back to Franco's comments about the expenditures of other departments. I think what we have to realize is a lot of staff
Give me that
being
again.
certified, going to class for certification or recertification.
Just read.
So,
Yep.
and that's an expense we don't have to have, so that might be one of the reasons why. And it was surprising and interesting to see the figures there, but I think that's,
Yeah, I'm aware of that,
Supervisor.
like the electrical department and those other departments, that's,
Okay,
all I had to say.
okay, we'll recess at this time and be back at 6 o'clock for our regular meeting. Thank you, folks. Appreciate it.